Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's now 7:30, as posted, quorum being present. This is the June 28th meeting, 2018, of the Lake Boon Commission. Just advising people, especially if you're new to our proceedings, and last month we weren't recorded, they didn't have anyone recording it. This meeting is being recorded kind of by robots. There was no one upstairs running the camera, but it was pre-programmed to start at 7:25 and stop at 10:25 or 10:30. So hopefully we'll be through well before that. And then the gentleman who is now Ann Van Tyne, who was the lady who used to show up here and give us our warnings, has retired. There is a new fellow that's running now in her position named Jonathan Daisy. He will edit out the beginning of it and cut off the end, and then these are not broadcast live anyway. They are recorded and then played on Stowe TV and also made available on YouTube, so that they'll be there forever in the internet ether.
I believe you should stay till 10:30, just in case.
Second.
And Dick will keep you company.
So, I would just read the items that we have, brief items on our agenda tonight. They are relatively short in number, and we start as always with public comment, followed by approval of the minutes of the last meeting, pay any bills that might be properly before us. We have a meeting with Erica Bigelow concerning a proposal to install aeration equipment in Monahan's Cove. We then will discuss the current status of our rules, bylaws, review process. Then we will quickly mention any new business and debate for our next meeting or adjourn. So anything beyond that, we cannot debate or we shouldn't even discuss other items. Public comment is available, however, for people, if there's anyone here tonight that has something you would like to bring to the commission's attention that is not on that agenda that I just mentioned, something that we might, should be aware of, or if we decide to place on a future agenda, we will be glad to do that. Carolyn.
Carolyn McDonald, 76 North Shore Drive. I've noticed that there are a number of lakes that have been shut down around the area due to E. coli and the runoff, and I'm wondering if our lake's been tested.
I cannot answer that. I don't believe they test here until the beach opens. I
That's
think
correct.
Okay.
So the Department of Health has to test when the beach is open. They test once a week.
Yeah.
When does it open?
It should be about now. It's because it's when school gets out.
No.
So I'm not sure when it's when the rec programs start running at the beach, which will probably be next week.
I know the kids are swimming there already, so that's why.
They've been for some time.
Yeah.
So, and Erica, do you have a question?
Yes, I had a public comment that's something I want to bring to your attention. In the course of the work that we've been doing in the code, one of the people who was involved in cleaning the cove has reported that he already has lily pads growing on his property, and I talked to Solitude Lake Management, and they have told me that control, I don't know what the scientific name is for these things, the invasive lily pads, but they are not part of the current contract, which I understand.
They're native plants, so they are not. If they did a treatment, can kill a annual crop, but they come back because they have rhizomes that
Right.
stay buried in the muck, and they are not an invasive that can be targeted for removal.
So you can't target them, you cannot have your contract cover them,
Right.
even though they behave like an invasive plant. Irrespective of the fact that they're native, they behave like an invasive plant. I mean, I've seen them, you know, down where the public boat landing is. You get halfway into the season and it's a wonder that any boat can go out there because it's just overrun.
Okay.
But you can't do that. There's no recourse.
We treated the fourth, third,
So
and
we gotta
fourth
be
basin.
careful. I don't think, the word can't might be too strong there.
Okay,
It's a byproduct of treating for invasives, will give you temporary control.
What typically happens is sonar does affect pond lilies, but like Don said, it doesn't kill off the roots.
right,
I use the rhizome is the correct term, it doesn't kill off the rhizomes.
right.
They're very thick and they come back, but it does usually knock them back.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a conservation issue if they'll allow us to treat it for them or
Right,
not.
but the commission decides, this is what I'm trying to find out is, you decide, you award the contract, correct?
Half correct. It's very complicated. What we do is we petition the conservation commissions in Hudson and Stowe to treat the lake.
I see.
They give us an order of conditions telling us what we can and can't do. Then we issue a request for proposal to do what we're allowed to do.
And the towns split the cost?
2/3 Stowe, 1/3 Hudson. You
Got
wanna
it.
jump in?
No, that's fine.
Okay, and typically the contract is a 5-year contract?
3.
3, okay. So, the contract expires this year, when will the petition be made?
When will what be made?
You'll make a new petition for a new
lot.
contract.
Going
When
out
does
for-
that happen?
We'll have to get the quote
Sorry,
this coming fiscal year, starting July 1.
So,
Do we need a new order of
is there a-
conditions?
No.
and so, no, there's an open rolling OOC on this, right? And so, do you have a proceeding here to discuss what the scope of the contract should be? Is part of the Lake
No.
Boone Commission? You do not.
We take the advice of the experts that tell us, they do.
So Solitude gives you
They
a,
will do a weed inventory.
Got
And
it.
they tell us what we should do in order to control it, within the terms of what's legal.
but you ask them to give you the weed inventory.
It's part of the contract.
Okay, all right, all right.
Okay,
Like I said, it's complicated.
It sounds like it.
And it also goes all the way back to conservation commissions too.
Sure.
Because there's a rather arduous orders and conditions in effect. And Solitude helps us make sure that they have it,
Yes,
that we do that right.
I understand.
And typically, there's minor treatments and major treatments. And, because you can't keep the weeds under control. So what we end up doing is, like, I think it's every 3rd year, we end up doing a major treatment. The other 2 years, we do a maintenance treatment.
Got it.
And that is all in the contracts.
so the first year of the coming contract will potentially be the larger treatment
Which will happen next spring.
next spring.
And the major treatment does include sonar.
All the treatments include
Yes.
sonar,
They all include sonar.
and some of them include dicot.
So,
But it's like-
my
We
understanding,
really can't get into a
Okay.
full-fledged discussion of this.
when can I have a discussion about this?
You can talk to one of us off the line
Okay.
about it.
That's fine, great.
And with all due respect, Conway is, because his neighbor, and maybe that's who you should talk to as well.
And Andy would be the designated person for that right now.
Because he's the contact person with the contractor, he's most familiar with its terms.
Okay.
Current
So maybe you
I'll-
can make
right.
that connection later.
Yeah.
Anything else?
All right, thank you, sorry.
Yes,
Is this the proper time to give feedback about the laws and bylaws, or will it be time for public comment when you're talking about it?
technically there isn't, but feasibly what we do is we try to link things together. Rather than having you say, try to guess what we're gonna talk about and then say, tell us now what you think about what we're gonna say.
Yeah.
We bend the rules. It's a public meeting at which the public is entitled to speak, but not guaranteed. You can't break in and participate in the meeting. However, the chair historically here to help us process our work says at a certain point, when we get to that item, we will have some discussion ourselves, and then if you want to say something, it has to be recognized, and we will recognize you for comments or questions.
Okay, so I should wait for that?
Yes. So any public comment or anything else other than this brief agenda? Hearing none. Next item, meeting minutes. I've had a chance to review them. I did not find any corrections, but
Motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
second. Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of the meeting of May 23rd as submitted. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, those are done. What happens with those, by the way, for the public, once they're done, Chris sends a copy to both Stowe and to Hudson town clerks, and they become part of the public documents and history of the town. And they're available for anybody to see at that point. Payment of bills, and this has some, the one bill we are paying tonight is related to, being asked to pay, is related to the weed treatment. That is handled in a different manner than normal appropriation items, which we used to have to pay Lee Heron's patrol hours, for instance, and that was a personnel issue. But any bills, if we had bills pending for buying equipment for the commission for the current year, or payroll, it is due to the town accountant by July 9. This one will make it by then, but it doesn't have to, because the appropriations for weed control are done by special articles by both town meetings, and they carry forward year to year. So there's an exception. So my question is, hopefully no one has hidden away a bill for reimbursement for copy paper or supplies or buoys or batteries. Good. So the only bill we have in front of us tonight is, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is the final installment.
Oh, now we need Andy. I believe that's true, but I don't know. It is, I know it's an on, because these things, the way they run,
Well, the period covered is from June 1 of 18 to 6/30/18. So it's this month, so we should not expect anything else. But if the contract called for one final payment of $500 in August, we can do it.
yeah, we can do that anytime. That money is,
So we're paying the bill
This is Solitude.
dated 6/1/18.
yeah. The Solitude bills, as you said, are covered by special articles, and that money is separate, and it's not tied to a fizz year,
Right.
fortunately, because we go nuts if it was.
So the total amount of this bill is $3,657. And the way it works, because it comes from two separate town meeting articles, Stowe's share is $2,438, Hudson's is $1,219. So can I have a motion to approve payment to Solitude as shown on bill dated 6/01/18
So
for
moved.
$36.57?
So moved.
A second?
Seconded.
And the numbers are specified in the motion, because I just read them that way. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the bill as mentioned, please
Aye.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. I'm gonna sign.
Then we'll copy it.
And I'll copy this after the meeting to give you a copy for our records, and then leave it under the door of the collector.
If you're lucky, you can do that. I have to create more paperwork before I can turn mine in.
Okay. Next item, meet with Erica Bigelow, where concerning aeration of Lake Boon on the hill. Come on up.
Hi,
Come
you want
sit
me to
at the
come up?
table.
Oh, I
Yes,
have to
please.
sit up here? Okay.
I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, have you?
Hi, Dawn.
Hawks. Yep.
We've met in
Maybe.
town, I think.
Around.
Conrad?
Conray.
And Chris Graveland?
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
So before we start into that,
Yes.
this one, can I just kind of suggest that given our jurisdiction, right, in this area, that we kind of contain our questions, like I went through, I had a million questions, but then I realized most of them don't pertain to what our jurisdiction is. So, you know, given that our responsibility is the health and the safety on the lake, along with what we have as bylaws, can we kind of constrain our questions to that, since that's what should govern whether we give our approval or not versus
It's
COMCON?
not approval, it's a recommendation
Support.
to the
Yes.
Hudson
Yeah,
Conservation
exactly.
Commission.
Yes.
And I
Well,
think, no, and I think if she explains a little bit, but the process that she's gone through, I think it'll be kind of self-evident, but I agree with you that we are narrow focus on this.
Yeah, and this does say approval from, just so you know.
Well,
So,
What does it say?
It says the client responsibilities include written approval from the Lake Boon Commission. As
Where,
opposed
where
to-
does it say the client responsibility?
On.
Oh, in the proposal?
In your
Oh,
document.
well, yes, but from Solitude. Yes, but that's nomenclature that they put in there. It's not necessarily nomenclature that I endorsed. Okay, I'm Erica Bigelow. I live at 13 Temple Avenue in Hudson on Lake Boon Cove, also called Monahan's Cove. As you may be aware, last year in the fall, was it in the fall? I
Mhm,
think it was in the
yes.
fall. Myself and my neighbors spent a great deal of money, having received we actually got our order of conditions from the Hudson Conservation Commission in the spring, but we were not able, because of the timing, we weren't able to schedule the work under the order of conditions until the fall. So,
Can you just
I'm
detail
gonna
the scope of the
describe
work?
that, yes,
Yeah,
the
thank you.
scope of the work was to hydro rake the cove. It was, we had permission to hydro rake basically the entire cove, but since nobody was funding this other than the homeowners, it was really a question of whether or not the homeowners would pay for the hydro raking and how much they would pay for. The scope of the work that we were originally told was that it would take, if we did everything, it would take probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 business days.
When you say everything, you're referring to
Everything
everything
from
that's
the
included,
terminus of the cove to the mouth of the cove. yeah.
basically what's shown on this.
Basically what's shown on there. So they did an analysis, a sedimentation analysis, measured how much muck that was in there, how much weeds, and they came up with an analysis, and then actually when the operator got out there, it turned out that it was actually much worse than the analysis.
Surprise.
Surprise. I don't know if you are aware, probably you are, Dawn, and you are, Conrad. We did a hydro raking project in the cove in like 2006, 2007. In our first time hydro raking the cove, the main things that we accomplished, we did clear out some muck and some weeds, but we also removed things that had been dumped into the lake.
Bodies,
Not bodies,
Refrigerants.
many bicycles,
tires.
furniture and pieces of doors, all kinds of stuff that just didn't belong in there. Anyway, over the years, of course, there's the town of Hudson, or whoever has jurisdiction over Main Street in that area, is not maintaining a proper sedimentation filter. And the runoff comes both through the stream and down Main Street, down Proctor Avenue, overrunning the manhole. And we had done a swale. We had done a swale back in 2006, 2007, but the runoff overran the manhole with the drains right into the lake anyway, with no filter. And
Are you sure that's not one of the sedimentation basins we put in?
it is not, it's just
We put 26 of those in.
it's just, you mean down in that area? Maybe, but there's no filters in there, nothing is, they get clogged and then they get overrun. So what happened with the original swale from 2006, 2007, is it had completely been buried in muck, coming off, sand mostly coming off Main Street, and then running right into the cove. So there was a lot of runoff in that end of the cove. So the project morphed into a much bigger project than we originally anticipated in terms of the amount of time. And we spent $70,000. $70,000 cleaning the cove.
How many people were involved?
And there were the tailors at Proctor
I don't need
Avenue.
names, just
Okay.
rough numbers.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
So average $10,000 a piece.
Whatever.
Yes.
Average,
Okay.
right. Actually, one person paid a lot less and most of us paid more than
Is-
10,000. Anyway, when we did the job, the people from Solitude said to us, well, this is good, you need to do this. It's very important if you want to preserve the cove. But then going forward, you really need to have an aeration system. It will keep the muck down because it will allow air to circulate under the surface of the water, which will allow the faster breakdown of biologic material that's coming in, either leaf fall or dead weeds, right? Because you kill the weeds. And it won't do anything about the runoff. That's a different issue, and we need to address that with the town. And they've made a promise. We made a much bigger swale this time, and they've made a promise that they will fix what's happening with the drainage
Just
going
to
into the cove.
Maintain that, clean out that.
To
so that it-
maintain and clean it out,
Okay,
right. But the aeration system is key. We can't do anything to keep the cove healthy without keeping the cove healthy. The easiest, most economical way for us to keep the cove healthy is to install this aeration system. Vertex is the company that manufactures these compressor and aeration systems. They used the data we got from Solitude, did an analysis of what we should have based on the size. It's technically quite small, and so what they recommended was two terminal
Heads. or-
two heads, right?
Yeah.
Aerator system. And so one, it would run off a compressor. We picked the property that was closest to the water. We'll have to probably pay for an extra electrical something to go to this guy's house. The compressor will be like an air conditioning unit outside his house. It'll have a soundproof on it that was in the proposal. We'll pay the extra for that. And basically, they'll run the system, and it will run all the time. I think, even in the winter. I'm not sure, they
I
may
wanna come
say
back to
shut it
that.
off.
Yeah,
I'm
go
not
ahead.
positive. We would do what they recommend. Now, in terms of whether or not the cove, there's two issues for you in terms of health and safety. One is this going to help the cove? And the answer is clearly yes. The other is, what effect will it have on boating? The first, one of the, if you look at the diagram
Mhm.
that was sent to you, there's two places where there's going to be these ports. One at 100 feet away
Yep.
from this house on Lakeside
Yeah,
Avenue.
we have this.
And this is where the cove right now is the deepest. Right here, at this part of the cove. This
Mhm.
is where the cove is the deepest. It's at least 3 feet deep here. And up here towards the mouth of the cove into the second basin. And I think the water there is 3.5 feet deep. And these things are supposed to run along the bottom of the lake bed. I don't know if they're anchored, I think they're weighted.
It said, I read the specs, it said they were self-weighted tubing.
Right.
Right.
And so they should not interfere with boats unless there's something with a huge draft underneath, but I can't imagine that there would be. People are coming down the cove right now because they can, which is the first time in several years that a boat has been able to come down the cove. So we see both fishermen, kayakers, and the occasional powerboat, but they're going very slow. So as long as there's no wake, I can't imagine there's any issue. The last health and safety thing is, let's assume for the moment, and I don't know, it would be what they recommend. If they want us to run the aeration in the winter, the cove has not frozen for years.
At all?
At all. Does not freeze. Nope. Hasn't frozen
Used to see
in,
hockey nets out there, what happened to that?
I have not, we had a conversation about this with all the owners, when we first started talking about this, because there was some initial concern, like, oh, are they gonna be people skating out there, and, this is gonna interfere with them, or you're gonna have thin ice? There hasn't been any ice. We haven't had any ice, at least as far as I know, in 8 years. No matter the weather. First of all, the stream comes in, and that keeps it from freezing solid. And secondly, at least up until last winter, there was so much organic matter in there that it stayed hot. And it never froze. And you might get a little slushy stuff right up here, but we haven't, that's towards the mouth of the cove, into the second basin, but nobody's had frozen water here for years and years.
Did you ask, with your second round of hydro raking now behind you, by removing all of that decomposing compost, is that likely to change?
I don't know the answer to that. We'll do what is recommended. My understanding is that nobody tries to skate down here.
Well, if.
Nobody has.
Well, if there's
There's
over-
nobody, I mean,
There's a
nobody.
good reason for that.
There's a good reason for that, but there hasn't been a lot of skating on the lake in the last few years anyway, because it's just, it just hasn't worked right.
Like a week's worth last year.
Yeah, so I don't feel like, even if we had to run this year round, that we're really interfering with recreational activities of anybody else. And the bottom line is that this is gonna preserve the cove. And if we don't do it, it will eventually eutrophy. There's just no way around it.
Devil's advocate. Suppose we get a real bad winter, and the
Mhm.
temperature, we've had pretty mild winters, not compared to our snowbird friends, but, I'm not gonna get into the debate of cause and effect and everything else. But it's a fact that our winters have not been, and we've had a lot less activity generally, not just there, but the whole lake. It's because it's been so fluky, and sometimes it'll freeze briefly and then thaw out the
Right.
whole thing and then refreeze. Suppose hypothetically, this coming winter turns out to be very different, no one can predict, and it does start to freeze down there. I would be concerned that we have the same effect we had down on First Base.
So it's basically an ice eater.
Yeah, because you're circulating the bubbles, which is moving the bottom water up, and so I would only caution that if we're gonna go ahead with this, that we have a fail-safe situation, that if it starts to freeze, you gotta shut it off,
Or market.
Or mark it.
Yeah.
or post it.
Or post it. I'm
Yeah.
happy to post it. I mean, I haven't even seen any ice right at the mouth of the cove where somebody would feel like they could go
I
there.
understand, but all it takes is a little skim,
Right,
and then a little snow on it, and someone who's not familiar with the area says, oh, there's ice here, there's ice there, and they're gonna skim. Even without this, they might go and fall
Right.
through a very thin
I would
skin.
post it, and I would be happy to post it, and I know that my neighbors would be happy to post it.
But keeping in mind this is a great pond, it's on Hudson side of the lake. There might be at least an alert to somebody that this situation exists, so that there isn't some liability that somebody, God forbid, gets hurt falling through an ice, which is, you might be party to a suit, hypothetically,
Okay,
that because it was thin, because you made it thinner, Joe fell through and did X.
right. No, I understand the issue. I think that the bottom line is that we'll do what Solitude recommends. And if they say it should be turned off on November 1, we'll shut it off on November 1. If they say you should run it all winter, then we would post it. And to the extent that nothing in the lake is freezing, I don't have a way to walk out, on the water and post on the water. But if the lake started to freeze, then the people who are participating in this project would be responsible and would be willing to put out
Okay,
some kind of a
that's just a
sign.
detail I think you need to work out with Solitude, because if it's exposure liability wise, they would be sued along with everybody else.
Well, I understand that you're saying that. I'm not sure that that's really true.
You can sue anybody for
You can
anything.
sue anybody, it doesn't mean you'll win,
That's right.
Now,
the litigious
and
society.
generally, if you go into a lake, you are taking a risk at any time, anybody is, because
Okay, we're
you-
getting far
Yeah.
afield on this
Yeah.
anyway. So let's just leave it that we have,
A couple quick comments.
Yeah.
Are you aware that aeration is also good for algae?
that it's good for them?
To kill it.
To
kill
Yes,
It's
oh,
toxic.
yes, right.
Yes, so, yeah, I think we ought to be running a lot of aerators around the lake, at least during the summer season.
Yeah.
I think if we do this project, it will allow you as a commission and other people on the lake to get a look at what it can do for us as lake dwellers.
The other comment is, did you try to get any public funding?
We have
CPC
not.
funding?
We have not, If I were trying to get public funding, here's what I want the public funding for. I want the public funding for a sedimentation filter that works.
It's been far worse since they did the work on the bridge. You remember? Hey, we used to drive right down into the cove. People take the boats down. There used to
Right.
be a boat ramp at the end where the Gray Ranch house is.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, well, my neighbor at the very end, he said, yeah, the people in that ranch house, they used to launch their kayaks off there.
They used to launch power boats off.
Yeah.
Monahan's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
not
so-
Monahan, further into Monahan.
Well,
And
It's
so
actually on Lakeside Avenue.
where's the bridge? You mean,
The one on
right-
Main Street, when they
right.
redid that bridge, is
Oh.
when the cove got killed.
the bridge right in that area
Stream,
or
the
up
stream, the
the
stream.
stream, over the stream,
There's
yeah.
a tremendous sediment runoff from that
Yes,
project.
terrible.
Yeah.
Plus then the development on
Golf
the
course.
street right next to the golf course, but the street right next to Lake Boon General Store.
Yeah, so anyways,
Okay, so I had a couple
Yeah.
of just questions. So I assume that there is no electricity that's actually going to the lake. It's just
Absolutely
It's just
not.
the pipes with air being,
That's right, the
Okay.
compressor will be on land, on 10 Lakeside Avenue's
Yep.
property.
and then the other question they had, so you mentioned that the most shallow is probably 1.5 feet where they're gonna put one of the diffusers or whatever
No.
they're called.
No, 3.
It's
So
2 to 3 feet here and 3 to 4 feet here. It's 1 foot to 2 feet down here, which is why the diffuser is going here.
Okay, because it's about, according to this, it's a little over 8 inches tall. So,
Yeah.
yes, but if it's down in.
You can't put it here because
Yeah.
it's too shallow.
Okay,
And you don't want it to be in a spot where a boat, a rudder, or
Right.
anything could
Exactly.
clip it.
yep. Okay, and, on this.
And by the way, I asked, shouldn't we have something down here? And Solitude said, nope, they, based on the analysis, this will be enough to aerate the whole thing.
One other caution, just as I'm thinking about it, and in the depth, and you're talking about fishermen. The one thing that can mess you up is if somebody throws an anchor over there to fish in the cove, and they could snag that.
I hear
your
you.
line.
They normally, they come to my house. They come here.
Mm.
This is where they go. But I'll put a sign up. Once it's installed, I'll put signs up on the shore
Yeah.
that say,
Underground area,
yeah,
underwater aeration,
underwater
do not
aeration.
anchor.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't guarantee anything, but that would.
Can't guarantee anything, but that's a
least you
great
raise the,
point, John.
flag
Yeah.
and said,
Okay, and then my last question is really for us, I guess it doesn't matter since it doesn't seem to freeze in that section now anyway. Obviously, part of the weed control today is it being low and it freezing, right? And that helps control the weeds.
This
But
doesn't.
this doesn't seem,
We
in
only
any
go down-
case, if it's not freezing, it's not
We
doing
only
that
go
for
down
them.
18 inches, so
Well,
that's not gonna
18
expose any of this anyway.
It shouldn't.
Well, no, I don't mean the actual pods, I just meant in general, the concept of
Yeah.
lowering, and that will get lower, and generally that would also help the weeds, but it sounds like it doesn't freeze anyhow, so
Right.
it's a moot point.
Motion to recommend that we support the aeration project as presented.
Okay, got a second.
Second.
Okay, discussion. I think since we have raised the subject here of the hypothetical freezing, I think I would like to include in the letter that we at least raise to the Hudson Conservation Commission our concern about that. And that if we have changing weather patterns that ends up with that freezing, that Solitude is responsible for making sure that those don't operate while there is ice there, or somebody is. But that we can just raise the question and it's up to Concom.
Right.
Perhaps to write in
Well,
there as a
I'll make
condition.
sure that when I haven't put in the application, I came to you guys first.
Yeah,
I mean, I have an open OOC right now, so and they know we're coming back
Yeah.
to do to request permission for the aeration.
yeah.
But since you've raised it, I will make sure that I discuss it with Solitude,
I'll put
and
it-
then
put
I'll
out.
raise it.
I will,
I'll put something in the application that addresses it.
and assuming this motion's gonna carry, I will draft a letter,
Okay.
which will just briefly say we support the goals of cleaner lake and blah, blah, blah. However, we just bring to your attention our concern that should this freeze, the effect of aeration would cause open areas which could create safety hazards that needs to be addressed in the overall administration of
Got
the
it.
program. Blah, blah,
Sure.
blah.
Okay, so what you're saying is, you're not saying that if it freezes, they have to turn it off, we're saying
We're
if
saying
it,
wherever
if it
no,
Town
freezes
needs
it
to
and
isn't
do
up to us.
something.
No, I'm just saying, that's in your recommendation.
We're just calling to their attention, to the applicant and the contractor and the town, since it's going through Concom, our concern that they should keep that in mind.
Yes.
And that they might choose, Concom, I would think, we might choose to address that.
Okay.
One other possible issue, that many years ago, we actually voted to require permits for any ice eaters,
Right.
and this is technically an ice eater. So,
Well, so I think that's the question. So if in fact it is going to, prevent ice from forming, if they have to run it year-round, right, through the winter, and it's preventing ice from forming where ice is forming elsewhere,
it becomes an
then
ice
they
eater.
have, then it becomes ice, of which they have to.
Assuming, of course, right, but there has been no ice in the cove.
Correct.
For
I
years,
understand that, we're
right,
dealing
so-
hypotheticals.
Yeah, yeah.
It makes it a little more challenging since we know there has been no ice in the cove for years.
Yeah.
I can't.
I guess my preference would be, if Solitude says, well, it really doesn't do a lot in the winter anyway.
Shut it
or in the
off.
Summer, shut it off and apologize. That's the safest way to do it, and then there's no question of liability or anything else.
Right.
but that's up to you guys.
I promise, I will ask for some guidance on this issue. I will let you know, by email what I find out anyway.
Yeah.
And, I will, address it in the application to the Concom.
Yeah, and if it becomes an ice eater, I think you have to come back and talk to us.
Okay,
And that's
Yeah,
it.
because we had one before and we voted at that time.
and what was this ice eater?
It's a machine that basically does what this does, but for a different purpose. It's to prevent ice from forming around docks. It circulates bottom
Got
water
it.
up, which prevents it from freezing. This one homeowner turned it on full blast and went to Florida. It opened up an area 150 yards wide that then froze over with skims of ice and
I
created very
see.
unsafe in the second basin.
Yeah,
Very
first
unsafe conditions. A couple of people fell through it.
First base.
First, yeah, first, yeah, it was first.
First basin, I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah, south.
In front of her house, kinda.
Right in-
Okay,
Yeah.
So an ice heater, right, is anything that allows the warm water to come to the surface. And there's two ways to do it. You can do it with bubbles,
right,
which is what you're doing,
yes,
or you can do it with propellers. So
Circulate the.
the propeller just turns slowly and it pushes the water up.
I see. Okay, I promise I will address this.
Okay, any other questions or further discussion on authorizing a letter of, and you authorize the chairman to sign that letter?
Sure.
Uh,
So we gotta amend that,
Yeah, just add, motion would authorize me to sign for the commission, so we don't have to come back and do it again. Okay, nothing further, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay?
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Good luck.
very
All
diligent.
right, I will try to email you, is your email on the website? You said I should get in touch with, about the
Andy.
Andy?
yeah, wait a second. I'll give you a piece of paper with junk on it.
Okay.
What's the total project cost on this?
On this, it's only about $5,000. It's a pittance compared to the hydro rig.
Did they take out more or less material this last time in the hydro rate, you remember the one, the first time?
I think I'm gonna say more,
Yeah.
yeah, but I'm not.
Hydro raking should have ripped some of those roots out on the.
Yeah, but it's been years. I mean, it was like almost 10 years.
No.
So,
Yeah, there's so much
Plenty
nu-
of time.
So much nutrient coming in from the golf
so much
course over there.
nutrients come, yeah, right. Thanks again.
Okay, you're welcome.
Good night.
Night.
Okay, so the action item is for me to write a letter. Promptly. Okay, discussion of, any reason of our being here tonight, LBC bylaw rules review. And this is version 5 that we are referring to.
0.5 really.
0.5.
It's just, it's not officials
Yes.
anyway yet.
Yeah, but only to identify which iterations we're looking at. We all have this document that Chris sent out, that's this one,
Yeah,
okay.
and the one that
There's
I
a
wrote.
few copies up here. That's my share.
And what this is in the first section of it is the general regulations, which we have had some discussion about over the months that we've been looking at this. There are not so many changes in this, there are a few things that we did. They are not specified here, but they're not tremendously important. And then the second section, which is the one that has to go to the state. The first section we could do just by town meeting approval, any changes we wanted to make on that. The second one has a three-step process. We have to have town meetings of both towns approve any changes and submit them to environmental, DEP. And they in turn turn it over to the Attorney General for general language approval. And then it has to come back and I think be published and
Yeah.
it's a long process. The timing of all of this, you know, we did fancy flow charts courtesy of Chris and everything before, but just so we kind of brought up to date where we are now. Stowe will be having a special town meeting, and we just set the date for it in our meeting 2 weeks ago, and we discussed it again last night. The closing of the warrant for that is August 15th. So keep that in mind as we're talking about anything that we might, assuming we come to, if we come to the happy conclusion, okay, with a couple of minor tweaks, this is the document we want to get public input on.
Mhm.
Can we hold a public meeting, come back and make any corrections, hearing any input from that, and then say, draft, put this in the form of something for town meeting by that date. It's ambitious.
Let me, can I ask a clarifying question on that?
Yeah.
So what has to go to town meeting is
All of
is
it.
the whole thing, not just the elements that are, you know, the non-voting regulations, right? The general regulations and the
Yes,
voting
because these
regulations
are
all
town
have to.
bylaws.
Right, so given that the, I don't know which order they need to be, we have to talk about, which order do they have to get approved in this, let's just say the voting regs piece of this, right? Does it have to go through the, you know, environmental police and other groups before we go to town? No,
No.
okay, all right, so,
The discussion I had with Captain Walker basically says, you go ahead and do what you're gonna do and then submit it for approval. It sounds, I don't like the idea. I wish there were a pre-approval process rather than going through the whole thing of trying to sell something to
Yep.
town meeting. And then come back and have them say, oh, wait a minute, you put the X in the wrong spot on that thing, we're gonna turn that down. But my understanding, subject to being corrected, is that they won't do that. Maybe town council reviews it, if we can get that, they might be able to do a little work and hit off that kind of eventuality, but I can't guarantee it. But the process would be, if we wanted to do this, to make it an October special town meeting, it has to be in final form and submitted as an article by August 15th, which is only 6 weeks away.
yeah. So my sense is we are not in a position to support that. We have to
And I
have
don't
town.
know-
I don't know when
Input.
Hudson
And
is.
you don't know when or if Hudson may have one.
I'm sure
They-
Hudson will, I just don't know the
Yeah.
date.
So, I just throw that out.
No,
Okay,
but
so I agree with you. I don't think it's realistic that we can do that. It would be cleaner if we could,
Yeah.
because that way we would have this all in place by the end of this year, gone through the state approval or whatever else, and then it would be in place for calendar 19. Otherwise, we're looking at May of 2019 to go as our target date for submission, which
Mhm.
on the one hand gives us more time to make sure we do everything we can to get it in the right order. But on the other hand, we'll put it sometime into the voting season or near the end of the voting season before we get approval on it, depending on how fast the Attorney General and DEP work. If you don't submit it to them until the end of May, or middle of May. But that, I think, may be the best we could do.
It's not like it's one of these nice things to do, and it probably should be done, but it's not critical.
No, and nothing in here is drastic. There's only a couple of changes, really, in the voting regs, and that's what most people are concerned about. That might even raise,
I have some comments on the generals too.
okay,
Why don't
well,
you
what's
take
your
public-
pleasure? How would you like to?
Why don't you take public comment and see what happens
Well,
there?
Well,
No, let's,
No,
let's.
let's
do
discuss it,
Let's
and
go
then,
through.
based on what we discuss, see what people think of what we're talking about.
Rule 3, I thought we were gonna eliminate. We're not trying to legislate what's the proper bathing costume anymore.
didn't we decide just to leave that as a archaic,
We, at the last that we had left that,
yeah, that's why.
because we didn't have a reason to remove it,
Right,
so.
it's a good, we're talking about the requirement to wear bathing suits.
Rule 3?
Yeah,
Okay.
the skinny dipping rule, so-called.
It's,
I don't,
it's like you said, it's archaic and, you know,
but
simpler is better.
There are certain other things, but if you, I think the idea was, nobody's really had trouble with any of these things, let's kind of leave most of them alone unless we can find a good reason to change them. But, and then on the other ones, it's let's simplify by not spelling out all this stuff, because it's covered by chapter 90B. I mean, our rule, look, I'll take note of your exception on that, but we're not doing a final on this. Maybe if we have a public hearing, people might come back and, you know, make a strong case for doing so. But at this junction, let's go with our earlier determination that we're leaving it. Anything else?
I thought Rule 7, I don't have the earlier ones with me right now. Since we have a rule saying that you require permits to rent stuff, Rule 7 becomes redundant. You can't rent without a permit, so if you got a rule that says you can't rent,
Right, but this says if somebody, you can't abandon a hired boat or leave it unattended from which it was hired. It gives if somebody makes off with a kayak and leaves it in the third basin, it gives somebody a finable offense to make sure that it gets returned. This Recreation
I don't really
Commission doesn't
care,
have it
just-
about that.
um,
I do have one on before we
Well,
leave page.
can we,
Yeah, go ahead.
so, I had some question on rules, and we had not, just so you know, previously, we had not chosen to remove that. Rule 6, I think we need to know who's going to take that action to town council, because what we need to understand is if we even have the authority to say that taking off or landing an aircraft.
That's, to my knowledge, that's been there since the 1941.
I don't doubt it, but I'm just saying, what we said was that we need to get town council to tell us whether we can even have that in here, because all I can tell you is I had one time when there was a plane landing on the ice and then taking off, landing on the ice, I ended up, because they contacted looking for something, and I talked to someone from, I guess, either the police and or the FAA, and they said that was legal to do. So,
by their regulations,
Yeah.
not necessarily by our
I know,
regulations.
so, but I think but whether we
If that's a
can,
federal regulation, we can't
Yes.
overcome
well,
it as well.
I guess, I don't know, so anyway, so I think we just need to ask about that from our town council.
I have no problem with that.
Yep.
Um,
All right,
I thought we had the ability to make things stricter but not more lenient.
We do, but I'm just wondering if this is like an area where,
Well, I think that what saves us there is except in an emergency. If you're having
Maybe.
a physical emergency on a plane, you can land anywhere you can.
But what she's
Well, yeah.
saying, even recreationally, somebody can land a plane on the ice and take off again.
We've had trouble with people bringing ultralights down too.
And technically, you could land a Piper Cutlass out there, there's plenty of distance, and people don't do it. But to the extent that it's in here, at least, you know, subject to challenge. I mean, if somebody went out and ticketed somebody for landing a seaplane on Lake Boon under this language, and there was places to challenge it, they challenge it. To my knowledge, there was-
Lawmakers pass unconstitutional rules all the time that get overturned on challenge.
but if we want to leave it in, I guess I'm coming down on your side of the thing. If we choose to leave it in, let's not blame it on a scrivener's error of something from 1941.
yeah, I would just say,
Uh,
let's just make sure.
I will.
If there's a way to check, I would vote to leave it in, under basically the same rationale that you had earlier.
Yeah.
Yes, I would too.
Yeah,
If they say, yeah, you
it's-
can do it
right.
with this language, then I'll leave it in. But I will,
Okay,
in any kind of accident, I don't have, none of us, I don't know for your side, have direct access to town council. There's a gatekeeper whose office is next door.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
same
So
thing
I
here.
can talk to him and see if he will get me an answer to that. Okay.
Okay, sorry, so,
Um,
you've got others.
On Rule 5, just, this is only a stylistic one, third line, after prevent accident, period, and then the next sentence starts with and. You shouldn't start a sentence with and.
Yeah, no person.
Just take out the word and. Rule 1, this is gonna open
Which rule on this?
on general rule. Gonna open a can of worms, but the worms are there. We can't avoid them. I spent 2 hours last night at the Pompo public information meeting sponsored by the planning board on marijuana regulations in town. Whether there will be some, the selectmen have taken the position in Stowe that since the town voted yes, there is one track that we would have to follow if the townspeople wanted to either prohibit or limit in some way what the state has authorized to be done by the referendum. We haven't taken a position of whether it should be banned or altered or limited, but we are strongly of the opinion that the voters of Stowe should be given a chance to weigh in as opposed to relying on something that was done in the presidential election, saying, people that voted yes say, well, yeah, I want it available, but it's a NIMBY kind of a thing. Do you want somebody at Russell's
So-
convenience store to be
yeah,
selling gummy
so-
bears?
So, I'm sorry, so what
So, we are now saying a legal substance, intoxicating legal substance for sale in Massachusetts is alcohol. Very soon, either in Stowe or environs, a legal subject of intoxicating qualities will be marijuana. Suggestion, does it make sense to put in here, or have possession of any drink of intoxicating liquor or marijuana, or, and then continue it.
Why
Well, I
don't you
don't-
just change liquor to drug? Any, what's the right word? Any intoxicating,
I would rather make it specific, since marijuana is now, they're two different things, they're very different licensing processes. The idea is,
so
we don't
if-
want people drinking on the
So
boat.
if you're high on opioids, it's okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Well, you can't
That's what you
ban
just
what
said.
people are doing on illegal drugs. But this is a legal recreational product, as for the voters of Massachusetts, it will be. The point is, we want people to have it available with smoking it or potentially smoking it on the water, any more than we do liquor. I don't personally think so.
Is there anything in the boating regs not ours, but
You
the,
can't operate in an impaired fashion.
yeah.
We can be more restrictive, but
Yeah,
not
no, I know that,
less.
I know, I'm just,
So, there's nothing in the general voting laws of, in chapter 90B that says you can't have liquor on a boat. We chose to be more restrictive.
yes, I understand.
My personal choice is to be more restrictive on this language, on marijuana,
Mhm.
for the reasons I just stated.
The state law, I don't have my state stuff with me. But the state law says something about impaired voting, period. I don't know what, I'm not looking it up. So my question is, if you're gonna restate what the state's already stated,
We're not,
Well, this one includes possession, doesn't even,
yeah,
you don't have to be,
yeah.
impaired. It's basically in possession
Tec-
of.
Technically, I mean, we
or
don't need to
drink.
get into what the
Right.
actual hearing is, but it gives somebody a case in an extreme circumstance of somebody being extremely abusive. And suppose you get on a Sunday afternoon, 6 pontoon boats and clouds of smoke coming up out of there. I don't think that's what anybody would like to see. And if that occurred, somebody would come back to us and say, hey, when you're redoing the rules, yeah, we had to talk about that, but we decided, well, we wouldn't mention it. So there's nothing we can do about it. I would rather take it on and address it and put it in there. I'm not asking you to decide it now. I'm
Okay,
saying-
and the logic behind that specifically versus, you know, cigar smoke or cigarette smoke
Mm.
is its impairing
It's
qualities, right?
yes, intoxicating.
Yeah, okay,
It's a safety issue.
so comment, got it.
So
Okay.
I would, at some point when we say, okay,
Yep.
this is now ready to go out to put it out to public comment, my suggestion would be to do that.
Yep,
Since we don't have the authority to change it ourselves, but that would be my suggestion. Anything else on page 1? Page 2, 9. That's, we've never done that, to my recollection.
Which one?
Ordering a dock, Rule 9 to be removed, but I think it's a
Well,
good
we
one.
need Rule 9.
We do.
and
We
We do
need to
not
do
enforce
something.
it
Yep.
because it's arduous to enforce.
Yep, but.
We've tried.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you're saying remove it?
No,
Honey?
no, we
No,
have
keep
it.
tried
No.
to use it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should leave it because
Yeah. We've talked about these before. I
there's
just-
some really messy, nasty looking things that end up
Yes.
then just in the water.
They end up floating, and we end
Yep.
up pulling them out or hitting them.
So
Uh,
while we may not,
I have tried to get the patrol officer or the police to help enforce this with zero luck. Just impossible to get it done. And I believe that basically,
What was their argument for not being able to do it?
well, okay, who owns the dock was the first argument. Oh, there's nobody home was the second argument. How do we serve it, the third argument? It just goes on and on and on, that it becomes an arduous process to actually do this. I agree with it, it should be done, and I've asked, maybe we can ask more formally through Mike Solis, that he would survey the lake and come back and tell us the answer to this, and start to do this. But
Well, he's not gonna survey the lake. If we
We can
point out
survey,
a
right.
dock and say, look at this thing, it's fallen in the lake.
Someone has
somebody comes
to,
into it.
someone has to
Right.
do that.
so
Well,
I would
we
say,
could-
why don't we table the how to do it? I
Yeah.
think we're in agreement that it should be here, and maybe that's a future thing, is to talk about, you know, do we
Well,
have
this
sort
is-
of a,
This is an issue for us, how do you enforce that one?
Right, we don't know.
of course.
right, but it's still that, we don't wanna remove the rule.
Right, we do not want.
Even though it's a general bylaw, the police can
I know.
issue tickets for it.
Yeah,
but no one ever has.
that
Right.
may be true.
Anything else? I will note on Rule 11 that your draft had retained the fee about, the $5 fee that we charge and then waive. Chris, I think correctly, has taken that out.
I thought we said we were gonna take it.
Yeah, I think that's why. But maybe in your one-page
does.
draft, you would left that
I
in.
was confused, because I read what you sent around first, I didn't realize it was my draft, and I said, oh, I like this.
But it's, yeah, so it's
Yeah.
correctly removed. And the one big substantive change out of all of these really is doubling the fine capability, which we've agreed to
Mhm.
previously. Was $50, we're proposing $100 on this and the voting regulation violations. Doesn't say it has to be 100, it says it may not exceed 100. Okay, working from the same document, going to voting regulations. The, Chris's question in the shaded section and referred to below says any powerboat operator must meet statutory requirements. And then it goes on to say all operation must be in compliance with. Her question, I think, bears some discussion. Is it redundant? Do we need it?
We don't need it, it's
That
redundant
first
to
sentence.
state, we don't need A at all, it's redundant to state law.
So we just start out with all operation of watercraft, and that covers it, because you got Coast Guard, general laws, and,
Okay, good.
Everything
and the
in
more
A-
specific.
Everything in A is covered currently under
You're
90B.
talking about
No,
rule?
I'm not,
We're
I'm
talking
talking
about
you're
the
up top.
preamble.
Oh, I'm
so
sorry,
the-
you're in a different place than I am.
Yeah,
I'm talking about her shaded comment there. I think we just take that whole sentence out,
Okay, I'm with you. Yes, I agree.
Okay.
okay?
okay.
Except no, wait a minute. It's not strict compliance with the US Coast Guard rules. We do not do that. It's the Chapter 90B, the state rules.
That came out of Fort Meadow, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Okay, then we gotta be careful on that one. Because Coast Guard, we're not a river going to the ocean or on the ocean.
Mhm.
So I don't think we should have the Coast Guard piece in there. It's Chapter 90B, the General Laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is what it is.
So we take out,
Strict compliance with the general laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
okay, do we want to, have we referenced 90B anywhere?
No, I think we had this conversation kind of back and forth a
Yeah.
little bit, and rather than put something in that then could become, that could be only one of multiple or something later.
Okay, but I think if the document itself, if it's in its final form, the way you have it here under document references,
I only put that for us, not as.
I would think it would be a good thing to, we would come to that.
But it's something that may shift, and we don't wanna have to go back and get approval because they introduced a new section
We're not
to-
gonna enforce anything of that, but it says that that's what voting regulations is. They will continue anything on voting, they will.
But are you saying that this information becomes part of our bylaw?
No, it's beneath a line, it's just a
Okay.
reference,
Okay, as long as we
for
can.
further reference. In other words, we reference laws all the way through here. Somebody picking this up for the first time says, well, it says general laws, where do I look? Let's tell them where to look. That's all it is. It's not saying we're gonna enforce anything of that, it's just, it's like a footnote in a legal document.
Yeah, mine earlier said Lake Boon is a great pond in the state of Massachusetts and it is governed by the voting regulations established by the state. It's the voter's responsibility to know and follow the regulations. That was the Senate. I don't remember where I got that from, but that's the real issue right there. It's not our responsibility to educate the voter, it's the voter's responsibility to know. Just like if you get stopped on 495 for doing 70 in a 30-mile-an-hour zone.
Okay, so that isn't a rule anyway, really, that.
It's just a comment.
That's a comment,
It's
and
a-
I think that's where it should have reference to state laws,
Well,
and,
in mine it said that no one followed the regulations established, well, you could add established by the state in Chapter 90B if you want.
and further, since it's not part of the rules, but if somebody's picking this up, it's never been on the lake before, and you look at this, and so I got all these sorts of things, and I see all kinds of violations of this. What do? We keep telling, we know, you call the Stowe Police. I think at some point we put in, these rules are enforced by police only for any violation, in parentheses, tell people what to do. If they have a question, or,
I don't know if that belongs in the
No,
rules.
I don't either.
It's a process problem.
but that's not it's not a rule, it's saying the same thing you're saying.
No, because you're talking about who can enforce it. We're not saying who enforces it, we just simply say it's your responsibility to know and follow them. You know,
Since for years and years and years, we enforced it, and now we don't, it's a new world. I'm trying to say, under the new world, this is what you do.
if you want to post something at the kiosk where they
Which-
launch boats,
Which we have.
we can do, but we've already
All
done
right.
evidently,
Okay.
but
All right, I thought I believe it a point.
So I guess the question for us is whether we're going back to what Connie's was, which is Lake Boone is a great pond in the state of Massachusetts. That means that it is governed by the boating regulations established by the state. And it's the voters' responsibility to know and follow these regulations. In addition, there are specific rules on Lake Boone, violation of which could result in a fine. So that's what, that's what,
Yeah, I like the language, it points out in there that it's the voter's responsibility.
There's, you wanna see it, right?
so we're scrapping this one,
No,
but
she's got it from your
You've got- she's got it,
earlier
yeah.
language.
No,
I've got your
I was
earlier
just-
language,
I
but,
was just putting it in front of you so you could see
Yeah.
it.
so are we?
Yeah, I like the, of course I'd like the one I wrote.
So this one was more from Fort Meadow,
Um,
and then there was
It's a little bit of
yours.
everything, yeah.
No, I'm
Oh.
just saying, the
Oh, I
one that
got
I
you
put
now.
in was the one we kind of lifted out of Fort
Fort Meadow,
Meadows, and the one that you
yeah.
put in was one you created.
Right.
And, yeah, because it says, in addition, there are specific rules on Lake Boone.
Yes. The violation which can result in a
But
fine.
she says the following more restrictive rules and regulations of Lake Boone Commission.
Just touch it, goes into sleep mode. Yeah, I like this because it's very to the point.
This is,
No, I haven't.
this is from his earlier one,
Yeah.
the whole thing,
Yeah.
in addition,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Want to go back to, just go back to that and substitute that for this lead-in?
Yeah.
Okay.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll call that the Connie Wharf law.
No, it's Lake Boone Commission.
Put your initials next to it, so I know what we're putting in there instead.
Okay.
Rule one, speed. Chris has a question highlighted.
So I added this, because I know we've talked about and we've had some public comment about.
Rule one or rule A?
Oh,
A,
A
1A.
under rule one. So, I
Responsibility for
added
wakes.
the for property damaged as another thing.
Everything you wrote is in 90B, almost verbatim. Including
We
your,
had this,
including the fact that you're responsible for your wake.
it doesn't actually,
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it
I'm not
does.
looking
I'll
for
have to
that.
find it for you, but.
Well, they keep saying it
I
when
know,
you hear the environmental police
I
talking about it.
couldn't find it.
But
So where did you look?
I looked in
in
90B,
the CMR,
and there's some reference to it in the old environmental police's kind of summary.
No,
Thing.
summaries don't mean anything.
I know, exactly, but, so it was there, and I know they talked about it when we had our major meeting, but I
So
couldn't
what
find
hap-
something that said they're
The
responsible for
reason
the
you
wake.
can't find it is because they have obfuscated, I can't say the word,
Obfuscated, yes.
thank you. In 90B, there's references to other places, and it's in one of those other places.
Yeah.
I can probably help you find it if I don't, if I had my computer with me, I'd pull it up.
It's fine, but, so
Yeah.
are we?
I believe A is redundant to the state law. But as such, my goal and stuff is, the less words we put down,
Mhm.
the better off we're gonna
Yeah.
be. It's hard to get.
It was on yours,
Yeah,
just so you know.
I know. Well, time goes on, right? You think about it, you think about it. It's the old Mark Twain. You remember Mark Twain, what Mark Twain said? I'm sorry I wrote you a long letter, I didn't have time to write a short one.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm ambivalent on it.
well, we have,
Well, let me ask you this. If we were to keep A, would we add the comment about property? Because that was not part of that's not part of our current bylaw, and it's not, so I added that, it wasn't in your draft, Connie, either. And I literally was just trying to highlight the fact that we wanna keep impressing on folks that they're responsible for their wake, right, so.
So it could read, "or property damaged by the creation of excessive weights." I mean, that's what you're saying, whether we agree to it or not. Because let's face it, one of the biggest problems we hear complaints about, I hear complaints about,
Yeah, it's gonna get worse.
are the big wakes and the big boats.
What's interesting is we have far fewer boats and far less traffic than we've ever had.
And it's about 3 or 4 of them,
But
that's getting everybody's shorts in a
Right.
knot.
I don't think we have fewer boats.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Oh,
Not at any given time, but
maybe you mean out on the lake or you mean in
The
general?
traffic on the lake is
traffic.
far less than it's ever been.
Yes.
And,
Yeah,
and the type of traffic for the most part is pontoon boats.
it has gotten kayaks and,
yeah.
Kayaks and
Paddle
pontoon,
boards and
paddle
pontoon
boards.
boats.
Right.
At
Yeah.
night,
Huh?
yep,
pontoon boats at night.
yep, yep.
Yeah, so there is, the nature of the lake has changed a lot.
Yes.
I mean, you know, I don't ski anymore, but I drive a lot. And there was a time when we wouldn't go skiing because there was 5 other skiers out there. It almost never happens now. If there's 2 ski boats in the lake, it's unusual.
Might that change with the Fourth of July coming up?
It might for a while, but it's,
Yeah.
the real reason it's changed is because the nature of people living on the lake has changed.
Demographics.
The demographics are very different.
Yep.
And as the property values are going up, I mean, we've got a couple of ski boats in the lake that are $150,000 boats.
Right.
You know, when I grew up, no one could afford stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's at least 3 of them on the list that I'm aware of that
Yeah.
come in that price range.
Okay, so we're not really sure on A. Maybe leave it, maybe, so we haven't closed on that.
But to the extent that both Connie's language, which you just said
Yep.
substitute,
Mhm.
basically is saying everything below here are things that are not in general laws, that we are
Yeah,
more
good
specific
point.
to Lake Boone.
That's true.
So, reasonable, great, proper, everything else, it makes sense, that's an operating guideline, but it's under the general rubric of what we've already said, it's your responsibility to know.
As long as we can find something that talks about excess weights, we're responsible for the
It's there.
Yeah, so.
Well, they've told us it's there.
I know, that's what I'm saying,
Okay, let's
I
find-
went looking if you could,
If it's,
Because I think
but
about
if it's
it-
not,
right,
we could be more restrictive and put it in.
correct.
I believe it's in their summaries. And I've had this discussion with them a couple times about the summaries not being accurate. And they always say to me, oh, we'll get back to you, and they never do.
Yes, that's why I think it's also in a summary.
And what they say to us is, the summary's not the law, 90B is the law.
Exactly.
So those summaries you gotta be careful of.
Yes, so that's why I'm
If you want
thinking
it
we
now.
Yeah, I
want
know.
some language.
I'm not ignoring you, I'll get to you. in a
Okay,
minute.
I can wait.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So let's,
I'll see if I can remember to look it up.
Okay,
or.
I
yeah,
think I found
ask-
it once upon a time.
Ask somebody, because, yeah, I mean, the wake, it's really a question of not so much reasonable and proper, everything else, it's the wake issue.
So there, boy, my memory's gonna fail me right now, but the environmental police maintain a 24-hour number that you can call. And you can call them and ask a question, and they will get back to you. Because that's how you report accidents, that's how you
Yeah.
report stuff. And I forget the name of it, but I used to have all that data, but I have to go find it somewhere, but,
Google it for us.
yeah, right,
I got an action item right away. How about you do it?
I'll figure that out.
You Google it and come back.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can, just for further discussion. But then clearly, the rest are what we thought we were doing here, is
Mhm.
only highlighting the rules that go above and beyond the state. The narrows, half hour after sunset. Question, Conrad, you raised before, and it's not in here anywhere. Do we wanna put in somewhere, no water skiing in basins 3 and 4? I think it makes sense. It was your idea.
I have no problem with that.
I
Would
thought,
Doesn't say that anywhere.
I might say it differently, thinking about it though.
Well, if you limit speed, that's the other way to do it.
No, what I would say that water skiing, tubing, and wakeboarding, is only
Allow-
approved in basins 1 and 2. Because what you run into is, remember, who was the guy that kept telling us there is no basin 4?
Butler.
Butler, yeah. The trouble is, there's no clear definitions on basins 3 and 4, only on 1 and 2.
What would you think of just saying headway speed only in basins 3 and 4?
Well,
Well, that's different than ski, not
Basing-
skiing.
Well, you can't, if you got headway, you can't ski.
Well, obviously, that's true, but you also can't go faster than headway, and I don't think that's what we're saying.
I'm with you, Chris, that the basin 3 especially is big enough, so when people leave the 2-3 narrows, there's a area in there where they'll speed up and then they'll slow down before they go down to your area, unless it's John Flynn.
It's not, no personalities.
No, I know, I'm joking. Or, I know too much history. Or if they go the other way, that people pretty much limit it to headway speed only. There should be a headway speed only buoy out on the way to your house. Did Dave put it out yet? That's actually our buoy too.
Okay, so are we saying for A, that we wanna append to this one, the water skiing, tubing, and wakeboard riding is prohibited in any of the narrows and in basins 3 and 4?
I'm okay with that.
So it eliminates water skiing, tubing, wakeboarding, doesn't talk about no wake or whatever,
Under A or,
under A. So it covers both prohibiting it in the narrows and in
but
basin 3
we
and 4.
were just talking about eliminating the whole of,
We're in Rule 2, right?
I was in Rule 2, cause it
oh, you're in Rule
addresses,
2, okay.
it
All right.
addresses,
All right, I was still,
that.
Yeah, we haven't actually, we jumped by a couple things and moved on.
Yeah, but because you started to talk about
Yeah.
yeah.
basins, so where it the basin belongs on Rule 2A, if we're gonna put it in there, and I'm
Okay,
fine,
all
so
right.
we'll put that in there. So you wanna go now back to
What else you want?
On 1D,
D.
you guys had put back state holidays and I took them out, and I finally figured out why. On summers, 2 to 6, it's daylight. It's daylight at 6 to 8, like right now. As soon as we get into too far into fall or spring, it's dark. And basically, you can't do anything anyway. You can't go fast after 6 anyway, because it's dark.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you could still have quiet hours starting at 2.
Well, yeah, but basically you're shutting the lake down for the rest of the day for any boaters. And there's
That's
so
right.
little traffic.
I don't know, it seems like there's a lot of canoes, kayaks, swimmers that are out there.
And I spend a lot of time in the lake and I just don't see it.
Well,
So, and it was changed in 68. Before 68, it was only Sundays and holidays in the summer. I've got the very old rules.
but one of the immediately preceding constituted commissions with questions from somebody who was in this room, I think, prompting it, said, what is a holiday?
Yep.
And that previous commission, as I recall, said, okay, we'll go with state holidays.
I actually believe it came from town, either town council or,
The other problem that
that was interpreted, not just by LBC.
No, but it was raised
Yeah,
by,
right, but
but
it
that's
was-
the way it has been enforced
it was
for
more
the
than
past several
raised.
years.
What happened was, July 5th was a Monday and July 4th was a Sunday, and a lot of people got July 5th off because the
Yeah.
4th came on a
Right.
holiday. And the patrol officer decided to enforce July 5th as a holiday, and he got his hand slapped for it because it's not what the regulations said. And this still, this becomes a little bit,
But if it says state holidays, in that example, July 5th is a state holiday.
no, it's not.
It certainly is.
Well, if it is, I mean, it either is or it
certainly
isn't, right?
is.
So they're
No.
published,
If
I'm just saying.
But what I'm
Every
saying is.
year they change a little bit.
Yeah, but when the 4th comes on a Sunday, the Sunday is the state holiday.
No,
Yes.
it's not.
Well,
They require closure of certain establishments, banks, post offices, everything else.
the state
I'm not
publishes
Monday.
I'm not
which
sure.
are the state holidays, that it's published, it's.
We can't redefine them.
Right.
The question is, it now says Massachusetts state holidays. And I'd
What
like to
I
leave-
put in was Massachusetts state holidays. So
Okay,
right now, it says the thing about holidays including
yeah, I know.
the blah, blah, blah,
I will,
including Memorial Day, Independence Day, and Labor Day,
I
something
like-
to that effect.
I like the way it is in this draft D.
Well, I'm gonna vote against it and say no, because it's, if you watch our lake daily, there's so little traffic on the lake
I
now.
agree, we don't need to belabor it, because we aren't voting on something that's going to town meeting. We're voting on a draft which
Okay.
will be put out for public comment. We may get public comment that says, we love it this way, or please don't do that for the following reasons. We may come back and revisit it. But for draft purposes, if you wanna vote on it just to make sure we are doing it, that's fine. I don't think we need to. I think the sense of,
Yes, I would like,
Don't
I
have it
certainly
the way
think
it
we
is
should have
here,
it this
but
way, and I think that's the way
for
it was
discussion purposes.
interpreted
okay.
previously for us.
But you can note that
Yeah, I got
Conway
it.
is
Yeah.
not in agreement with
Yeah.
that. Okay, now you're saying A, instead of eliminating it, you're saying add the words
Basin 3, 4.
and basins 3 and 4.
Yep.
I would
Yep.
agree with that.
Yep.
Um, Rule B is a change, but I think it's one we've agreed to.
Yes.
You had only just one line, but we're saying one line and no more than two persons.
I think, didn't I say both? But I agree with the two
I think when we
persons.
talked
Yeah,
about it,
yeah,
we decided,
yeah,
yeah, we
right.
forgot to put back in the 75, so.
No, that,
Oh, that's the
in
next
B.
one, yes, and, yeah,
So we're
Yep.
we're in agreement for this draft
Yep.
as it's submitted here.
Yep.
And the tow line's 75 feet.
Yep.
And A, we're gonna keep that,
My rule was actually set third and fourth basins. She's putting it back in.
okay, good.
see?
See how influential you are, you don't even realize it. Rule 3, we don't want people living on boats. So
Yeah.
we leave that.
The reason that only two people, there are water toys out there that'll hold a lot more
Oh,
than
yeah,
two people.
6.
Yeah.
But,
The problem is when they start falling off, it
Yeah.
creates a real issue.
yeah, with following boats and people banging heads and everything else. And what we're doing here, we're saying we're changing it, yeah, we're making it more liberal. We could have been enforcing all along at 1, and we didn't.
Right.
So let's have it do what we're actually gonna enforce. Rule 3, as I said, A is okay. The airboat reference, I don't know why it was, again, it was done in 1941. Maybe they saw airboats as the wave of the future or something. I don't know why it has a horsepower,
I don't care if that goes away.
yeah,
You
just
mean the whole thing,
No,
or
no,
just the
just-
horsepower piece of
the
it, honey?
part you have shaded.
I gotta
No
Yeah.
catch up
airboat,
with
Yeah.
which
that.
requires a propeller, or propellers.
So the
above
problem we have
surface of
if
the
we do
water.
that, right, is that the only airboat I've ever seen on Lake Boon is the people that do the weed control.
Right, and
But that's provided for in the
provided
rest of it,
for.
if we leave the rest. We are signing a contract to
Okay.
do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're just gonna get rid of the horsepower part of
Yes,
it.
the part that's in parentheses and
Yep.
shaded, take
Okay.
that out.
Okay,
Okay.
got it. Okay,
All right,
all right, so now you have some.
now questions.
Yeah, couple of concerns. So I understand that you guys are taking the stance that, Laura Diamond, 76 North Shore Road.
Now, which one, if you would identify which item, which number we can turn to,
Okay,
when you
this
come
is,
to it.
this is a general comment. You guys are taking the stance that we should not list the state rules and regs. However, there's 2 rules that are very different from our old rules that require, I feel, bringing it to people's understanding and attention. And I feel that they should be in these regulations, and it's very important to have them in the regulations. And that is the 150 feet. We've been following 75 feet all along, 150 feet from shore and 150 feet from swimmers and other boats. You guys have copies of the rule, but I feel very strongly that to not have these in here, because they may change, or, they haven't changed in years, we never had them in here, and I think we'd be doing a disservice to our community, and it's an oversight not to put that in there. You guys have spent also some time talking about the wake, even though that might be in the rules. I think it's really important to let people know that they're responsible for the wake damage that is caused. That happens all the time on our lake, the water is just hitting our shore and washing up, on our rocks, on our property. So I think those two things are really important to keep in here, and I would argue that I understand that we're referring people to this, but these are two things that have been brought up and discussed when the regulations, we were told that they would be enforced, and that people are still not following those rules and regs. So I think it's very important to have them in this document. Also, C, rule, on page 2, rule 1, speed, C, I believe is incorrect. I think the regs state that people can't, it's no wake speed at the time of sunset.
No water skiing at the time of sunset.
Okay, water ski at the time of sunset. So I have to reread this, but that's another thing that is different than our regs from the past that I don't think people have a good understanding of now. People are water skiing after sunset.
Which is legal, water skiing, right?
Yeah, and so those three things, and I would also include life jackets being worn between Labor Day and Memorial Day.
Wrong dates.
What?
It's,
Being worn, what? What'd you say,
Those
Conrad?
are the wrong dates. The state regulations are different
Is it-
than those.
Is it September 15th to May 15th or something?
I can't remember if it's May or April.
Yeah, but whatever it is, it's a law that people tend not to follow, and it's a safety consideration, and I believe it should be in our bylaws.
But that's only in canoes.
So,
And
what,
That's only in canoes.
Right.
It's not in our books.
that's okay, I just think, yeah. So I'm saying, just to reiterate, the 150 feet from shore and 150 feet from swimmers and other boats, the exact verbiage, you guys have that. No wake speed after sunset, so that would be, I'm not saying it right. You can't water ski after sunset? It's no wake speed after sunset,
No, it's no wake speed a half hour after sunset.
but you can't water ski after sunset?
That's the state rule.
But you can still go at full speed after sunset?
The state rule says you can go full speed all night long.
Nice.
depending on the body of water, yes.
Okay. So the fact that you can't water ski after sunset is something that hasn't been understood on our lake for these years. That was brought to our attention with the discussion with the environmental police recently. So that, the 150 feet, and life jackets off-season, whatever the dates are. Those I feel are very important to have in this document.
Okay, made note of
Any
it.
other?
Just a
Carol?
positive Carol McDonald, 76 North Shore Drive. I love this document reference at the end, and I would continue to put those in. I think they're great. I mean, we're not referencing those.
It's not part of the law, it's just like a footnote that
It's a
tells you where
footnote.
to go to look for the information.
Exactly, and
Which we
it's
keep
based
referring to.
on decisions that you guys have made, and it lets people know where they can
Yeah.
go. You know, I really like this piece, so just
but no problem.
Nice job on
The
that.
reference is good.
Pardon?
The reference is
Yeah,
good.
okay,
Yeah.
Dick?
Dick Cummings, 22 Davis Road. While I agree that people should be informed about the 150-foot and these other things, I don't believe those belong anywhere in the rules because the state rules govern that. Those belong as educational pieces that we should emphasize and make available so that people are aware. The same thing, the summary for the state rules also mentions the 150 feet, but it's not the state law, which is a more nuanced thing. So I'm fully in agreement that we need to do an educational thing about some of these aspects and try to enforce that, or to educate people, and especially with the change from the 75-foot, but it does not belong in our rules. It belongs as an educational piece after the fact. And also regarding the quiet hours, about 94% of all the time on the lake is quiet hours. There's just nobody out and around. To make it, to say that the state rules, which then becomes kind of a murky concept or each year it's published by the state or something, rather than just the 3 holidays or the 5 holidays if you include Patriots' Day and Columbus Day, to spell those out explicitly makes it clear. And also, I just don't think that observed holidays like July 5th, which occurs, every 3rd year, 5th
Seventh
year,
year.
or something like that.
Yeah, 6
You know,
years.
this is an extra restriction on what people can do to use the lake, and most of the time on the lake, it's quiet time anyways. And I understand, I just don't see, I think that it should be brought, if it's gonna be included the rules that observed or any other holidays besides the very explicit holidays, as Conrad mentioned, one time recently, July 5th, the lake was shut down, and letters were written into the police chief, and it was interpreted then that observed holidays was not included in the regulation. So to change it so that it includes any other holidays besides those specific holidays is a further restriction of the use of the lake, and it should be spelled out that that's an intended restriction that folks are proposing.
Okay, I made a note of it. Anybody else?
Okay.
All right. So now we're on to V06 for next time, right?
Yep.
We're getting there.
All right.
Does that conclude our discussion of this for tonight?
Yep.
For tonight.
Okay.
New business, do we have any new business?
Anything,
A couple comments maybe, I don't know about new business.
well, is it comments for something, gotta be careful how much we
Well, no, it's.
deliberate or
There's
something?
no deliberation, just a comment
Just
that
public.
currently, I don't know if it's new business or not, and I don't know where it fits in the agenda, but the Stowe Police Boat is not in the water.
That's information, okay.
And,
No plans for it, immediate
I
plans?
do
for it?
not know what the plans are. It's not in the water, that's my only comment. If it wasn't for our boat, there'd be no patrol at all.
Okay.
So, I don't know if we as a commission need to say anything to the police about that or not. But anyways, just letting you know.
We can say anything we want, whether it affects
know.
anything or not, I don't know. I'd be glad to have a
Well-
informal chat with the chief and say, hey, are you guys gonna put your boat in the lake? And if so, is it operable?
Yeah, so my comment is that we don't enforce anymore, so we're depending on someone else to enforce. And enforcement requires a boat.
But they're relying on ours.
But they're relying on our boat, because it's a better boat, quite frankly, but, I don't know,
Well,
if our boat should break, there's no boat. So,
Yeah. Right, so you're taking the action, to talk to the police chief?
Yeah.
To see what the plan is.
just inquire, see, what's that number you vote? See, I'm gonna talk to,
Town council, find out about
aircraft.
And any other new business, gotta think about this for a second.
All the time you want, as long as it's not more than a minute.
Okay, I'm good.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh,
Wait a
that's the
minute.
date of
Next
next meeting. Nothing pressing for paying bills.
As far as I know, nothing. There'll be another Solitude bill coming in sometime, but,
Right.
are you traveling a lot in July?
No. Propose one meeting in July, third week, something like that.
The week of the 16th is open for me, and that's probably, is that or the end of the month? 4th of July is next week already.
Yeah.
Red Sox playing game 82 tonight of the
Yep.
season.
Hopefully
We're
winning.
halfway through.
So the week of the 16th, you know,
Is that the only time you're available?
pretty much. Pretty much.
So that was me.
Until we go to the last week of July. But if you wanted, what's today? Today's, well, that's not that far out.
No, that's about 4 weeks.
Yeah, so the week of the 30th of July, I'm open. The week of the 23rd, I'm gone. I'm using Monday dates.
So that would be, actually, that would be August, that week would be.
If you're talking about Wednesday, it's the 1st.
Yeah. If you care about it, that's when quarterly tax payments are due.
I don't.
You probably do.
I don't. August 1st?
August 1st is fine.
Okay.
Take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded?
Non-debatable, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.